Bukomero sub-county, located in the deeper recesses of Singo, Kiwoga district, is gradually emerging out of the Luwero bush war conflict. In this thriving center, Bukomero Premier Investment SACCO stands for the collective resilience of a community that is seeking to transform this backwater.
I joined the Bukomero Premier SACCO in 2011 when I was still working at Bukomero before my retirement. I used to have small loans that helped me to do some work where I could get money and pay school fees for my children.
And members of Bukomero have really benefited from this SACCO, as well as becoming part of the cooperative movement. And so many people have benefited through coming together, saving their money without charges. They get loans at a low interest rate because they are the shareholders of the SACCO.
However, a fight to control billions of shillings in the hands of savings and credit cooperative organizations in the country could threaten the gains of a sector that could transform the rural economy to lofty heights. At the center of this dispute are neoliberal-backed banking institutions with geopolitical interests and those who believe that cooperatives should remain in the hands of the citizens. With the country beginning to register growth in the cooperative sector after years of stagnation, there are fears that the creeping hand of the multinational banking sector could affect the rapid growth and self-sustenance of SACCOs. Leonard Okello, who is the CEO of Uhuru Institute for Social Development, says there's an aggressive interventionist approach from the World Bank to control the affairs of SACCOs in the country. With only a paltry 10% of Ugandans possessing bank accounts, there is a desire to see growth in numbers of those relying on the multinational commercial banking sector, whose profits are usually expatriated and funds moved to tax havens and secrecy jurisdictions. But locals are turning away from high lending commercial bank rates to borrow from SACCOs, which offer cheaper rates.
In fact, in Uganda, like in many countries around the world, in Uganda, we have big SACCOs which are run by professionals and village SACCOs run by peasants in the countryside. You have a big SACCO in the Uganda Revenue Authority, in the National Social Security Fund, staff members in the Uganda Wildlife Authority, in nearly every government agency, and in the Monitor, maybe in the Vision. All these are intellectuals. In Makerere University, one of the biggest SACCOs in Uganda is in Makerere University. In the army, in the police. Now, so it is an infrastructure that can get the entire economy organized. And moreover, not only organized, it is an infrastructure that can connect the intelligentsia to the business people, to the grassroots, to the peasants and the workers.
As SACCOs grow their revenue portfolio, there's a threat that this could affect the expansion and growth of the commercial banking sector. However, a suspicion which fed the Cold War conspiracies could be reverberating across the world and could return to haunt cooperatives in Uganda. There is an emerging theory that the seeds of a grassroots renaissance to organize cooperatives, whose creed is grounded on socialism, sprouted as a result of the predatory nature of capitalism.
Capitalist economy, in my view, is Kenya. But Kenya has one of the strongest cooperatives in Africa. In fact, Mwalimu SACCO in Kenya is the biggest cooperative in Africa and the 6th biggest in the world. That is how powerful cooperatives are. Okay? In Uganda, the Army's SACCO, Wazalendo SACCO, is the biggest SACCO.
Bretton Woods institutions led by the World Bank, which lends to many African countries, are speaking to governments for the need to put in place laws and regulations that support the agenda for financial inclusion. Working with policy wonks in government, the World Bank, according to Okello, wants to reorganize SACCOs and wants more Ugandans to join the conventional banking sector.
Some of these village civil associations have billions in their accounts, by the way, those who are now banking. So you see that so much money is still not in the financial system, and the risks involved are there. And so that's one area which began to attract the interest. They need to financially include more and more people. Of course, the third area is then you come to geopolitical economy interest. Okay, the interest of the international financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, the big international banks, and the multinationals in finding easy access to these communities, but it becomes easy to do business with them when they're in banking. But also with these big international banks, they do more business if more and more people can bring their money and bank with them.
It is what perhaps has fueled suspicion that the Washington Consensus is behind the overlapping regulatory framework. Cooperatives are now supervised by the Ministries of Finance, Trade, and the Central Bank. Until recently, cooperatives were regulated under the Cooperative Societies Act of 1991, which was amended and assented to by the President in February 2020, and the Cooperative Societies Regulations 1992. However, another law is the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act, which was enacted in 2016 to regulate the financial limb of cooperatives, which are SACCOs. This law repealed the Money Lenders Act and established the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority under the Finance Ministry. The regulatory authority's role is to license and manage Tier 4 microfinance institutions, manage money lending institutions, and overall, it's meant to supervise the non-banking financial sector. Amongst the Tier 4 institutions are SACCOs, non-deposit-taking microfinance institutions, self-help groups, and community-based microfinance institutions. However, there's another layer of regulation that places SACCOs within a threshold of 1.5 billion shillings and a share capital of 500 million shillings under the ambit of the Bank of Uganda. The overlapping laws is what has prompted the Governor of Bank of Uganda, Emmanuel Tumsime Mutebile, to write a letter to the Finance Minister, Matia Kasaija, on January 3, 2020. The letter is copied to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, the Secretary to the Treasury, Attorney General and Solicitor General. In the letter titled, and I quote, "Consequences of the proposed amendments to the Cooperative Societies Act vis-à-vis implementation of Section 110 of the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act 2016, I close quotes." Mutebile is quoted saying, and I quote, "The proposed amendments to the Cooperative Societies Act, on the other hand, have certain provisions that are conflicting with Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act 2016. Section 55A and 55D, for example, list mobilization of deposits, provisions of loans and other financial services to members as functions of savings and credit cooperative societies," close quotes. Mutebile postulates that the enactment of the amendments into law will create overlap and conflict in terms of supervision and regulation by three regulators, namely Bank of Uganda, Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, and the Registrar of Cooperatives. Jane Amuge Okello, who is the Operations Director at Uhuru Institute for Social Development, says there is a legal dilemma which must be addressed.
In our interactions with cooperatives, especially SACCOs at the moment, you find that they are lost. On one hand, the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority sends communication to SACCOs on what they need to be doing, especially around this COVID time. On the other hand, the large SACCOs, the likes of Wazalendo, are anticipating regulation from Bank of Uganda. At the same time, things to do with supervision and regulation is coming from the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Now, typically the argument is, why can't we just stay at home? We get registered at the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, get supervised within that very ministry. If there is need for this ministry to improve on its capacity to serve us, then let government do that.
Nobody in the cooperative movement does not want proper regulations. We all want it. The cooperative, when you talk to them, they want some form of clear regulation. That makes it easier to run so that there are parameters, especially because we had cases of theft coming in by people who come in saying they're coming to serve the people, but because they're more educated and the leaders are not very highly educated, it means they steal and the people do not understand what they have done and they lose money. Because of that risk, the cooperatives actually want to be properly regulated. But when 3 laws scatter cooperatives in one group in another ministry, one group in the other group in another ministry, another level in the Bank of Uganda, it is simply organizational confusion.
Would request that the government departments and stakeholders like World Bank, that has been so much at the center of paying for the consultants to advise government and all that, I think it's time for them to prioritize the rural economy. The bulk of people that belong to cooperatives actually are in the rural area. Luckily for us now, we've seen that more and more people are actually joining cooperatives, even the corporates. Most of the large institutions, whether it's NSSF or NTV or Nation Media Group, there is some form of cooperative in them. It shows you that the reliance on pure commercial or capitalist ways of doing things is slowly reducing, and people want to be in charge of the economy. They want to be the ones driving, whether it's lending, they want to be the ones to pull monies and lend to themselves.
But the Secretary to the Treasury, Keith Mwakanizi, told NTV that it's important to place SACCOs with large sums of capital under the supervision of the central bank.
So when the liberation came, the cooperatives which were strong didn't know how, because they had too much overheads. Contrary to what many people think, government didn't destroy cooperatives. They were destroyed by themselves because they couldn't cope with the efficient private sector, the private sector that had emerged. Yes, you see what I mean? Now, how to bring them back? Are they desirable? Yes, they are desirable. But they would have to take a different form of which they take. First, they must be well managed. So those are the few things which they have to battle with. Those who are talking about cooperatives. Nobody has ever said don't have cooperatives.
The compliance obligations that are put on this very SACCO, their audit you have to do audit and send those reports to to UMRA, and in the case of the large SACCOs to Bank of Uganda. Then also the Ministry of Trade will expect you to file annual returns. And then there are issues to do with fees that they're complaining about. There is contributions to the stabilization fund. There is contributions that has to be made to UMRA. So you find a cooperative that ideally is supposed to be getting its footing in its nascent stage, having to split so much money to different regulatory arms. There is no problem with regulation, and regulation is timely. It's even important. But the way in which it's being done to cooperatives Uganda is something that we need to redo.
Unlike commercial banks that have stringent management rules, cooperatives are guided by the principles of voluntary open membership, democratic members' control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, and member education and training. The Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority boss, Edith Tusubira, says the laws in place are meant to check bogus organizations like caring for orphans, widows and elderly, COE, that conned Ugandans billions of shillings in a span of 2 decades.
To start also talking to the institutions that we license, we so far, for this year, we licensed over 700 institutions. Actually, 800 institutions, we licensed them in this system. We follow them. We do on-site supervision. We do off-site supervision. Of course, COVID-19 disorganized us a little bit, but we didn't fall way back. We are on track. And I can just assure you that all complaints out there of money lending are beginning to shape up. We have been having situations where even some lenders decide to confiscate some of people's properties, and such things are beginning to get under shape. And so all we need is proper order. The challenges will always be there, but we are trying to do something about it.
The Minister of State for Cooperatives, Frederick Ngobi Gume, says despite challenges, cooperatives are the engine of growth.
The other betrayal in our economy is how expensive the money is. You go to a commercial bank, you are lending, you are borrowing at 25%. Definitely, if you're a union, a cooperative, you can't break even. So the government has also now adjusted and said, you can go to the microfinance support center, get some money to assist you in your business. And the microfinance support center must now give money. We are saying, we're insisting that the money lent to those cooperatives and other small-scale investors should be at a one-digit figure, less than 10%, equal to the Uganda Development Bank, such that our people can access credit and be able to do meaningful investments.
YSAF SACCO, which belongs to Watoto Church, is one of the biggest in the country.
During the time of COVID, so they would come and say, you know what, please can you help me and send money on my phone? I can't move from where I am to access money. So YSAF became their source of rescue during COVID. And because we've always forced our people to save, then they've suddenly realized, now we realize why you people were forcing us to save. Because now during lockdown, our only fallback position has been YSAF, where they were able to come and then get money to help them meet their different obligations that they had during COVID.
The history of cooperatives is buried in the footnotes of Uganda's colonial history. In 1913, 4 farmers in Mubende district rejected the unfavorable terms of trade by Asian traders placed on peasants through the help of indigenous middlemen. They started Chinakulia Growers Cooperatives, which spread through Singo and the rest of Buganda, which became a bastion for cooperatives. By 1970, cooperatives employed about 2.5 times of employees in civil service. But by the time the NRM adopted neoliberal policies in the late 1980s and early 1990s, many cooperatives were in ruin. Emmanuel Mutaizibwa, NTV Weekend Edition.